The anomaly of Shibuya crossing. The displacement was not a portal. It was a violent, instantaneous rewriting of coordinate data. 1 millisecond, Lelouch v. Britannia existed within the conceptual architecture of C's world, surrounded by the collective unconscious. The next, gravity seized his internal organs with the rudeness of a physical assault. He did not stumble. His body, trained in the theatricality of zero, automatically compensated for the shift in equilibrium. His boot struck asphalt, hard. The impact sent a microfracture of pain up his tibialis interior, registering in his parietal lobe as a dull, stinging yellow. He opened his eyes. Photons flooded his retinas, neon blues, abrasive reds, and a sickly, pervasive sodium vapor orange. This was Tokyo, but the atmospheric composition was wrong. The air tasted of sulfur and unchecked hydrocarbons, lacking the refined sterility of the Britannian settlement zones. The pedestrian density was illogical, thousands of bodies moving in a chaotic fluid dynamic across the intersection. Yet the silence was suffocating. Time seemed to decelerate. Lelouch's pupils dilated, adjusting to the glare of a massive monitor dominating the facade of the Q-front building. His brain began to process the data stream, categorizing threats. No nightmares, no Britannian patrols, no royal crests. Just a sea of civilians with eyes glazed by the apathy of late capitalism. Then the screens flickered. The ambient noise of the city, the hum of traffic, the murmur of conversations, did not fade naturally. It was severed. A static hiss cut through the audio spectrum, causing 3,000 people to flinch in unison. A white letter L in cloister black font manifested on the screen against a stark white background. Lelouch stood motionless in the crowd. His heart rate remained at a steady 60 beats per minute, but his cortisol levels spiked. He recognized the geometry of a trap. "I am Lind L. Taylor," a man's voice announced as the graphic faded to reveal a dark-haired individual sitting behind a desk, otherwise known as L. Lelouch's eyes narrowed by a fraction of a millimeter. The man on the screen was projecting confidence, but the micro-tremors in his masseter muscles betrayed high-functioning anxiety. This was a performance. "Criminals are being murdered worldwide," the man continued. "This is an act of evil that cannot be forgiven. I will catch the perpetrator behind these serial murders. I will catch you, Kira. Asterisk, Kira." The word hung in the humid air like a toxic particle. Lelouch observed the crowd. The reaction was not fear. It was a morbid, voyeuristic hunger. They were waiting for blood. "You think you can catch me?" Lelouch whispered to himself, his voice lost in the crowd. He was analyzing the speaker's rhetorical structure. It was a provocation, a direct challenge to an unknown variable. Then the physics of the world inverted. On the screen, Lind L. Taylor gripped his chest. Lelouch's analytical mind dissected the event frame by frame. Frame 1. The subject's eyes widen. No external projectile impact. No flash of thermal energy. Frame 2. The subject's diaphragm spasms. Oxygen deprivation begins. Frame 3. The subject collapses. The crowd gasped. A collective inhalation that sucked the oxygen out of the intersection. Lelouch did not gasp. He focused on the mechanics. Cause of death: myocardial infarction. Trigger: unknown. Vector: remote. A supernatural assassin. I can't believe it." The voice on the screen changed. The image of the dead man was replaced by the L insignia once again. The voice was synthesized now, cold, digital. "I had to test this just in case, but I never thought it would actually happen." Lelouch felt a cold thrill execute a subroutine in his nervous system. This was not a public execution. It was a sacrifice. The man who had just died was a pawn, discarded to secure a single datum of information. Kira, it seems you can kill people without being there. Lelouch's hand instinctively went to his left eye, covering the hidden sigil of the Geas. Remote termination, the power to kill from a distance. Was there another power like his own in this gray, rain-soaked reality? But I'll tell you this, the synthesized voice grated, echoing off the glass skyscrapers. If you are indeed killing simply by knowing a face and a name, then you've just revealed your location. Information hazard confirmed, Lelouch thought, his mind racing at the speed of a quantum processor. Face, name, those are the firing pins. This broadcast was only aired in the Kanto region of Japan. Checkmate. Lelouch smiled. It was a small, dangerous curvature of the lips. He respected the brutality of the logic. The entity known as L had just sacrificed a human life to narrow the search radius from planetary to regional. Macrocosmic resonance. The shudder. The realization hit the world a moment later. It was not a sound. It was a sudden, sickening drop in barometric pressure that spanned the entire Kanto plain. In a ramen shop in Shinjuku, a salaryman dropped his chopsticks, his hands trembling with an inexplicable nausea. In a nursery in Yokohama, 12 infants began to scream simultaneously, waking from dreamless sleep. Deep in the mantle of the earth beneath Tokyo, the tectonic plates groaned, a low-frequency vibration that rattled the tea in cups but did not trigger the seismographs. The world recoiled. The death of Lynd L. Taylor was small, but the method, the direct violation of causal reality, sent a shock wave through the metaphysical fabric of the universe. The natural order had been bruised, a law of physics had been bypassed, and the reality around them felt thinner, brittle, as if the sky were made of cheap glass that was about to shatter. For 3 seconds, the wind in Shibuya stopped blowing. The neon lights seemed to dim, surrendering to a darker, older shadow. Lelouch exhaled, the breath visible in the cooling air. The pressure stabilized. The crowd began to murmur, the sound rising like a swarm of cicadas. He was standing in a kill box. If the entity known as Kira required a name and a face to execute a target, then anonymity was no longer a luxury. It was the only armor that mattered. Lelouch adjusted the collar of his jacket, obscuring his jawline. He was a master of mass, but this game was different. In Britannia, power was projected through mechs and armies. Here, power was invisible. It flowed through fiber optics and broadcast signals. It was a war of information. He looked up at the screen where the L still glowed. Rules of engagement. 1. Do not be identified. 2. Do not reveal intent. 3. Locate the source of the remote kill. He began to walk, cutting through the paralyzed crowd with predatory grace. He needed a terminal. He needed access to the local data nets. He needed to understand the legal structure, the police database, and the mythology of this Kira. As he moved, he felt a gaze, not from the cameras, not from the people, from above. He stopped and looked up at the night sky, past the blinding lights of Shibuya. There was nothing there but heavy, leaden clouds, but his instincts, honed by years of surviving assassination attempts and royal treachery, screamed at him. Something was floating there, watching, laughing. Lelouch lowered his head and blended into the shadows of an alleyway. His violet eyes burned with a renewed, terrible purpose. Very well, he whispered to the damp concrete. If the currency of this world is names, I shall have to become a ghost. The game had begun, and Lelouch v. Britannia had never lost a game he understood. The ghost in the circuit. The biological machine known as Lelouch Lamperouge was malfunctioning. It had been 4 hours since the displacement event. The adrenaline spike from the Lindell Taylor broadcast had metabolized, leaving behind a corrosive residue of exhaustion. His core body temperature had dropped by 0.8 degrees due to the relentless, freezing drizzle that slicked the streets of Shibuya. Lelouch leaned against the rough brickwork of a back alley in Dogonzaka. His breathing was shallow, regulated to conserve calories. He performed a second inventory of his assets. 1. Ashford Academy uniform, highly conspicuous. The gold stitching and structural tailoring marked him as aristocracy in a world of polyester suits. It was a beacon. 2. Currency, a wallet filled with Britannian pounds. In this reality, it was worthless paper. He was effectively destitute. 3. ID, a student identification card for a school that did not exist. 4. Weaponry, none. 5. The GIAS, fully operational, 1 use per subject, absolute obedience, status critical. In any other scenario, he would have commandeered a vehicle and secured a safe house. But the variables here were too volatile. He was an undocumented foreigner in a high-surveillance ethnostate. A simple stop and frisk by a patrol officer would result in fingerprinting, deportation, or indefinite detention. If his biometrics entered a database, Kira or L might flag him as an anomaly. He needed to become invisible. To do that, he needed liquid capital. He spotted his target outside a pachinko parlor. A man in his late 40s, cheap suit, alcohol flush on the cheeks. The subject was counting a thick wad of bills, winnings likely, with clumsy, trembling fingers. Lelouch pushed off the wall. His legs felt heavy, the lactic acid buildup screaming for rest, but his face settled into a mask of polite concern. He intercepted the man in the blind spot of the street lamp. "Excuse me," Lelouch said. His Japanese was flawless, but his accent carried an imperious, foreign lilt that made the drunk pause. "Huh?" The man squinted, swaying. "What do you want, kid? Get lost." Lelouch stepped closer. He needed to be within 2 meters. He lowered his head, then snapped it up, locking eyes with the subject. The neurological intrusion was instant. The man's pupils contracted, his consciousness severed from his motor functions. The red sigil of the bird flared in Lelouch's left eye, rewriting the synaptic pathways of the victim's frontal cortex. "Hand over your coat and your cash. Then walk into that parlor and forget this interaction occurred." The command was specific. It closed the loop. The man stiffly removed his trench coat, a beige, stain-resistant blend that smelled of stale tobacco, and handed it over. He placed the wad of yen into Lelouch's palm. "Yes, sir." Lelouch donned the coat immediately. It was 2 sizes too big, swallowing his slender frame, but it covered the Ashford uniform. He pocketed the cash, roughly 80,000 yen, enough for a week of low-level survival. He watched the man stumble back into the noise of the parlor. No screams, no alarm, just a seamless edit to reality. Lelouch turned and walked away. He felt no guilt. He was a creature of necessity now. The sanctuary, cyberspace. 30 minutes later, he entered a generic internet cafe in Shinjuku. The air was recycled, thick with the scent of instant noodles and ozone. He paid for a 12-hour private booth with cash, keeping his head low, the trench coat collar turned up. The clerk, a bored university student, didn't even look at his face. Lelouch locked the sliding door of the cubicle. It was a coffin-sized space, lit only by the blue glow of a CRT monitor. He collapsed into the reclining chair. His body screamed for sleep, but his mind was a racing turbine. He grabbed the keyboard. The keys were clunky, the travel distance deep. He opened a search engine. Yahoo, Japan. He typed one word, Britannia. Enter. The screen refreshed. Results, 14,200,000. Lelouch scanned the snippets. Encyclopedia, Britannia, Roman province. History, the British Empire. Tourism, the United Kingdom. He clicked the map of the world. He stared at the pixels. North America was not the Holy Britannian Empire. It was the United States of America. Japan was not Area 11. It was a sovereign nation called Japan. There were no Sacrodite mines, no nightmares, and no Lelouch v. Britannia. He sat in the silence of the booth, the hum of the computer fan, the only sound in the universe. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow to the sternum. He was not just exiled, he was erased. The hatred that fueled him, the burning desire to destroy his father, the emperor, had no target here. Charles Z. Britannia did not exist. The crushing weight of the Britannian aristocracy did not exist. For a moment, the genius strategist was just a 17-year-old boy, alone in a dark room, staring at a map that made no sense. His hands shook. The grief was a cold, hollow thing. If his enemy didn't exist, what was he? Nunnally, he typed her name. Nunnally Lamperouge. Nunnally v. Britannia. Results, 0. He closed his eyes. He let the pain wash over him, clinical and raw. He cataloged it. Then he compartmentalized it. He locked the grief in a mental vault and welded the door shut. If there is no emperor, Lelouch whispered to the screen, his eyes snapping open, cold and violet. Then I am free. He deleted the search history. Now, let us assess the local variables. Intel analysis, the Kira phenomenon. He spent the next 6 hours devouring the internet. He read news archives, conspiracy forums, police blotters, and the fervent, unhinged worship on Kira's Kingdom fan sites. He constructed a mental profile of the enemy. Subject, Kira. Methodology, heart attacks, cardiac arrest. Trigger, name and face required, derived from Shibuya experiment. Psychology, narcissistic, messiah complex, childish need for validation. Vulnerability, he is reacting to L. He is provoked easily. Subject, L. Methodology, proxy engagement, information control, high-level clearance. Status, the current king of the board. Vulnerability, he is operating within the law, mostly. He needs proof. Lelouch leaned back, steepling his fingers. The friction of this world was high. He couldn't just summon a rebellion. The technology was primitive compared to his world. No nightmares means military power is static, not dynamic. Power here was entirely soft. Surveillance, media, law. He checked his stolen cash. 78,000 yen left. He needed a phone, a prepaid model, bought through a proxy. He needed a clean residence. No hotels, they required passports. But first, he needed to test the limits of this Kira. Lelouch navigated to a bulletin board known for doxing criminals. He found a thread discussing a local loan shark in Kabukicho, a man named Goro the Hammer Tada. Photos of the man were posted. His full name was listed. The comments were begging Kira to kill him. Lelouch watched the clock. If Kira is a god, does he hear every prayer, or does he only browse the front page? He waited. 10 minutes. 20. He searched for news on Goro Tada. Nothing. Interesting, Lelouch murmured. The judgment is not automated. It is manual. Kira has a throughput limit. He cannot kill everyone. He selects. This was the weakness. Kira was human. He had to sleep. He had to eat. He had to read. A knock on the cubicle door, sharp, authoritative. Lelouch froze. He glanced at the time. He had only been there 6 hours. He paid for 12. "Police!" A muffled voice came through the thin plywood. "Routine inspection. Open up." Lelouch's mind raced. Routine inspection. The Japanese police frequently raided net cafes looking for runaways or undocumented workers. It wasn't a manhunt for him specifically. It was bad luck. The random cruelty of a statistical anomaly. If he opened the door, they would ask for ID. He had none. If he used geas, he could escape. But a police officer walking out of a net cafe with memory loss would generate a report. L would read that report. L would see the pattern. Anomalous neurological event in Shinjuku. It would draw the eye of the detective directly to him. Lelouch stood up slowly. He trapped himself. The booth was a dead end. He looked at the fire alarm trigger on the wall above the monitor. He looked at the 78,000 yen in his pocket. Calculated risk, high. "Just a moment," Lelouch called out, his voice feigning the grogginess of sleep. He grabbed the heavy ceramic ashtray from the desk. He wasn't going to fight. He was going to create chaos. In a world ruled by invisible gods and hidden detectives, the only way to survive was to be the static in the signal. Lelouch smashed the ashtray against the fire alarm. Clang! The bells began to scream. The sprinklers hissed, sensing the impact vibration, or perhaps a heat sensor he hadn't noticed. Water began to spray. "Fire!" Lelouch shouted, kicking the door open. Chaos erupted in the cafe. Patrons surged into the hallway. The officer stumbled back, distracted by the sudden bedlam. Lelouch v. Britannia slipped into the panic, pulling his stolen trench coat tight. He was just another faceless shadow fleeing the noise. But as he ran into the rain-soaked night of Shinjuku, a smile crept across his face. He was homeless. He was broke. He was hunted. But the board was set, and he had just made his first move. Lelouch v. Britannia stood in the cramped bathroom of a derelict apartment in Kabukicho. The mirror was cracked, spider-webbing his reflection into fractured slivers of violet and pale skin. He had purchased the identity 3 days ago from a breaker, a nervous, twitching man who operated out of the back of a pachinko parlor. The cost had drained 80% of his stolen funds, but the dossier in his hands was flawless. Name: Lelouch Lamperouge. Origin: French-Japanese transfer student. Status: enrolled, Department of Economics, 2O University. GPA 4.0, fabricated. He held up a strand of his own hair. It was too recognizable. The black was stark, the style too aristocratic. He took a pair of cheap rusted scissors. Snip, snip. He altered the geometry of his silhouette. He roughened the edges. He wasn't a prince anymore. He was a student. He was boring. He was background noise. "The best place to hide a leaf," Lelouch whispered to the shattered mirror, "is in a forest." He adjusted his contact lens. The gas sigil in his left eye was covered, dormant, but the power hummed beneath the surface. A loaded gun in a room full of knives. 2O University, the Nexus. Based on his analysis of the Kira investigation leaks on the dark web, the intelligence profile of the killer suggested a student or young professional. High ego, high intellect. 2O was the premier gathering point for Japan's elite youth. If Kira was arrogant, he would be there. If L was hunting him, he would be there too. Lelouch smiled. The purple aura of his ambition flared in the psychic landscape. He was walking into the lion's den not to fight the lion, but to see which one of them was wearing a collar. The auditorium of 2O University was a cathedral of concrete and ambition. 3,000 students sat in silence, the air thick with the humidity of suppressed anxiety. Lelouch sat in row 42, seat C. He slumped slightly, curving his spine to diminish his height. He was observing, always observing. The red aura. On the stage, a young man was walking to the podium. Lelouch's eyes sharpened. Light Yagami, the freshman representative. Perfect scores across every subject. The boy was handsome, symmetrical features, an aura of polished humility that was so meticulously crafted it felt synthetic. As Light began to speak, the world shifted for Lelouch. He didn't just see a student, he saw a chromatic signature. The air around Light seemed to vibrate with a deep, blood-soaked crimson. It was the color of righteousness curdled into fanaticism. It was the color of a judge who enjoys the execution. "We are the future of this nation," Light said, his voice smooth, resonant. "It is our duty to uphold the law and create a just society." Liar, Lelouch thought. The subtext was deafening. Light wasn't talking about law. He was talking about order, his order, the blue aura. Then another figure shuffled onto the stage. Lelouch blinked. This was an anomaly. The second representative, a slouching, disheveled figure in a baggy white shirt and denim jeans that looked like they hadn't been washed in a week. Dark circles under his eyes that spoke of chronic insomnia. He walked like a primate, hunched over, barefoot inside of cheap sneakers. "Hideki Ryuga?" The crowd murmured. Who was this slob standing next to the golden boy? But Lelouch felt the temperature in the room drop. The air around this Ryuga turned a freezing, absolute cobalt blue. It was the color of logic stripped of humanity. It was the blue of a computer screen in a dark room. It was the color of deep ocean pressure. Light and Ryuga stood side by side at the podium. Light smiled, a perfect, practiced smile. Ryuga stared, a blank, unblinking abyss. The psychological pressure in the room spiked. It wasn't visible to the other students, but to Lelouch, who had lived his life navigating the treacherous courts of Britannia, the tension was suffocating. This was not a friendship. This was a standoff. Red versus blue. The killer versus the detective. Lelouch felt a thrill run up his spine. He had found them. Without a single database hack, without a single GIAS command, he had identified the singularities of this universe just by reading the atmospheric pressure of their egos. And he was the third variable, the purple chaos that would destabilize the equation. The tennis court, psychological warfare. 2 days later, the campus tennis courts. Lelouch stood by the chain-link fence sipping a can of cheap coffee. He watched the match. Light Yagami versus Hideki Ryuga, L. It wasn't tennis. It was a kinetic interrogation. Light/Kira perspective. Internal monologue. He challenged me. Why? Is he testing my physical capabilities? Does he suspect I'm Kira? If I win, do I look too competitive? If I lose, do I look weak? I need to maintain the perfect student persona. I will crush him, but I will make it look like a friendly match. I am the god of the new world. I cannot lose to this slouching freak. Action, Light served. A blistering 180 kilometers per hour ace. Aura, the red spiked, aggressive and jagged. L/Ryuzaki perspective. Internal monologue. Kira hates to lose. It is a childish psychological trait common in narcissists. If Light Yagami is Kira, he will try to win this point, even if it is strategically irrelevant. I will push him. I will irritate him. I want to see the crack in the mask. Action. L returned the serve with impossible reflexes, his body moving like a liquid shadow. Aura. The blue was calm, enveloping, suffocating the court. Lelouch/0. Perspective. Lelouch watched the ball fly back and forth. To the untrained eye, it was an exciting match. To Lelouch, it was a dialogue. Light strikes hard. He wants dominance. L strikes weird. He wants confusion. Lelouch took a sip of coffee. They are so focused on each other, he murmured to himself. They have tunnel vision. He decided to introduce himself. The match ended. Light won 6-4. Both men were sweating, panting lightly. They walked to the bench. Lelouch stepped away from the fence and walked into their path. He timed it perfectly, intersecting their vector just as they reached for their towels. That was an impressive display of kinetics, Lelouch said. His voice was casual, but he pitched it perfectly to cut through their heavy breathing. Light looked up. The perfect student mask snapped into place instantly. "Oh, thank you. You're Lelouch Lamperouge," he said, extending a hand. "Economics. I just transferred." Lelouch looked at Light. Red warning. Light's thoughts. "Who is this?" "Lamperouge. I haven't seen him before. He's analyzing me. Why is he staring? Is he another agent?" "No, he looks like a rich kid. Harmless, but I'll keep an eye on him." Lelouch turned his gaze to L. Blue warning. L's thoughts. Heart rate steady, pupils normal, posture slightly arrogant, transfer student. Probability of him being Kira, less than 1%. Probability of him being a distraction, 15%. I will ignore him for now. Lelouch smiled. It was the smile of zero, hidden beneath the face of a student. "I couldn't help but notice," Lelouch said, looking between them. "You two play as if the net isn't there, as if you're trying to hit the person, not the court." The silence stretched for a microsecond too long. Light laughed. It was a bright, fake sound. "You have an imagination, Lelouch. It's just a game." "Is it?" L spoke. His voice was low, monotone. He bit his thumbnail, staring up at Lelouch from his crouched position. "I think Lelouch-kun has a keen eye. It felt like a battle to me." Check. Lelouch had successfully inserted a wedge. He had validated L's suspicion while flattering Light's ego. "Well," Lelouch said, checking a non-existent watch, "I have a lecture. Calculus. It's dreadfully boring, but necessary." He turned to leave. "Wait," L said. Lelouch stopped. He didn't turn around. "Did I overplay it?" "You're good at reading people," L said. "Do you play chess?" Lelouch turned back. His violet eyes gleamed. Chess, the metaphor of his life. "I dabble," Lelouch lied. He was a grandmaster. "Why?" "I'd like to play you sometime," L said. "Light-kun here says he's busy with his studies." "I'd be delighted," Lelouch said. "But be warned, I hate losing." He walked away. As he put distance between himself and the two monsters, the world around him seemed to warp. The red aura of Light Yagami was a towering inferno behind him. The blue aura of Lawliet was a vast, freezing ocean. And walking away from them, a thin, jagged line of purple lightning crackled in the air. Lelouch chuckled softly. "The king," he whispered, "has entered the board." At this precise moment, the viewer's thumb hovers exactly 2 millimeters above the screen. To the untrained eye, this is mere hesitation. However, on a neurological level, a violent conflict is taking place within the prefrontal cortex. The viewer is currently processing the auditory data stream, a synthetic voice so optimized for narrative delivery that it bypasses standard skepticism and stimulates the imagination directly. The dopamine receptors are firing. The immersion is absolute. Yet a fatal error in logic is about to occur. The viewer operates under the assumption that the algorithm will naturally return them to this channel. This is a statistical miscalculation. Without the tactile confirmation of the subscribe function, the probability of retrieving this specific narrative frequency drops by 84.7% within the next 48 hours. The creator, dependent on this metric to fuel the AI generation engine, waits in a state of suspended anticipation. There are two distinct timelines ahead. In the first, the viewer scrolls away. The story ends here, lost to the entropic chaos of the feed. In the second, the viewer exerts a mere 0.5 newtons of force. The connection is solidified. The production of future chapters is guaranteed. The choice is not merely about support, it is a tactical decision to ensure the survival of the story itself. Do not hesitate. Correct the timeline. Subscribe. Back to the story. The Black King and the White Detective. The University Union building was a cavern of glass and steel, filled with the low-frequency hum of students pretending to study. In the center of the lounge, a singular gravity well had formed. A chessboard sat on a low table. On one side, Lawliet, Ryuzaki. He was perched on the chair like a gargoyle, knees pulled to his chest, bare toes gripping the edge of the seat. He held a sugar cube between his thumb and index finger, contemplating it as if it were a microchip. On the other side, Lelouch Lamperouge. He sat with aristocratic posture, legs crossed, his spine a vertical line of defiance. Standing just behind L, arms crossed, observing with the eyes of a judge, light Yagami. The air around them was toxic with intellect. Turn 12, the probe. L dropped the sugar cube into his tea. Plink. The sound rippled through the tension like a gunshot. You play aggressively, Lelouch-kun, L murmured. He reached out, using only his thumb and forefinger, and lifted a white knight. He placed it deep in Lelouch's territory. You sacrifice pawns without hesitation. It shows a lack of attachment to traditional structures. Blue logic, Sir L. Internal monologue. Subject, Lelouch Lamperouge. Heart rate, 68 beats per minute. Steady. His playstyle is chaotic. He abandons defense for momentum. It reminds me of a guerrilla fighter or a terrorist. He doesn't protect his pieces. He spends them. Why? Is he trying to end the game quickly? Or does he simply not value the lives of the pieces? Lelouch smiled. He picked up his black bishop. Structures are brittle, Ryuzaki, Lelouch replied smoothly. He slid the bishop diagonally, slicing through L's defensive line. If a king does not lead, how can he expect his subordinates to follow? Purple logic, Kichiyu, Ikuneman, Sinan, Lelouch. Internal monologue. He is testing my psychological profile. He wants to know if I value order or chaos. If I play defensively, I look like I have secrets. If I play too aggressively, I look like a sociopath. I must play theatrically. I must give him a character to analyze so he stops looking at me. Red logic, light. Internal monologue. Interesting. Ryuzaki is probing him. Lelouch is dodging. If a king does not lead, that's a dangerous philosophy. It sounds like a dictatorship. Is Lelouch a sympathizer or just an arrogant rich kid? Either way, he's distracting L. That is useful to me. Turn 24, the interrogation. The board was a graveyard of captured pieces. L took a sip of his syrup-thick tea. Speaking of leadership, what is your opinion on the recent events? The Kira case. The question was a razor blade hidden in a bouquet of flowers. Light Yagami didn't flinch, but his aura flared crimson. He watched Lelouch's face. Lelouch didn't pause. He moved a rook. Clack. Kira is efficient, Lelouch said. The word hung in the air. L's eyes widened by a millimeter. Efficient? The crime rate in Japan has dropped by 12% in 3 weeks, Lelouch stated, reciting the data he had memorized. Fear is a powerful motivator. However, Lelouch looked up, locking eyes with L. His method is sloppy. He is a child with a magnifying glass burning ants. He lacks style, and more importantly, he lacks a clear endgame. What happens after he kills all the criminals? Does he rule? Or does he simply sit on a throne of corpses and wait to die? Red Spike, Manainermain. Tranan, internal monologue. Sloppy? A child? How dare you? You know nothing of my vision. I am creating a new world. You are just a critic. You are nothing. Blue Spike, Char. L. Internal monologue. He called Kira sloppy. Most people call Kira evil or God. Lelouch calls him inefficient. This implies Lelouch believes he could do it better. Narcissism detected. Potential for megalomania. High. I see, L said, his voice flat. So you don't object to the murder. You object to the execution. I object to the boredom of it, Lelouch countered. It's a unilateral slaughter. There is no strategy. It's just writing names. Turn 38, the impossible move. The endgame. L had constructed a fortress. His white king was surrounded by a wall of pawns and a rook. It was the perfect defense. Logical, impenetrable. Lelouch had only his black king, a queen, and one knight. Check, L said softly. You are cornered, Lelouch-kun. Conventional logic dictates you retreat your king to h8. Lelouch stared at the board. Retreat, hiding. That was what a normal player would do. That was what Light would do to preserve his cover. But Lelouch v Britannia was not playing for cover. He was playing for dominance. He reached out. His hand hovered over his king. Macrocosmic focus. Time dilated. The dust motes in the air froze. Lelouch gripped the Black King. He did not move it backward. He moved it forward. He marched the king directly into the center of the board, right into the line of fire of L's pawns. The shift. L dropped his teaspoon. It clattered against the saucer. Light's eyes narrowed, his composure cracking for the first time. What are you doing? Light asked, his voice betraying genuine confusion. That's suicide. The king is exposed. Lelouch kept his hand on the piece. He leaned forward, his violet eyes burning with a terrifying, charismatic madness. A king, Lelouch whispered, his voice resonating with the weight of an emperor, must move first. If he does not, his subjects will never follow. He released the piece. The trap. L stared at the board. His mind, a supercomputer of deduction, raced through 10,000 simulations in a second. The king moved forward. Why? It baits the white rook. If I take the king, no, I can't take the king yet. It's illegal. But by moving the king forward, he unpinned his queen. L's eyes darted to the Black Queen. If L attacked the king now, the Black Queen had a diagonal line straight to L's back rank. It was a royal fork in reverse. Lelouch had used his own life as the bait to trigger a massacre. L looked up at Lelouch. For the first time, the detective looked unsettled. This wasn't chess. This was a philosophy of war that L couldn't compute. L sacrificed pawns to save the king. Lelouch sacrificed the king's safety to slaughter the enemy. You, L started, his voice trembling slightly. You are a very dangerous man, Lelouch-kun. Checkmate, Lelouch said softly. It wasn't a checkmate on the board yet. It was a checkmate in 5 moves. L saw it. There was no escape. The psychological pressure of the king's advance had shattered L's defensive algorithm. L tipped his white king over. Click. The piece rolled on the wooden table. The silence that followed was absolute. The aftermath. Light Yagami looked at the board. He looked at the toppled king. For a moment, the red aura flickered, terrified of the purple void. Light's thought, he beat Ruzaki. He actually beat him, not by outsmarting him, but by outwilling him. This man is not a variable. He is a rival. Lelouch stood up. He adjusted his jacket. He was exhausted. The mental toll of projecting that much dominance without geas was staggering. "Thank you for the game," Lelouch said. "We should play again. Next time, try not to play so safely. It makes you predictable." He turned and walked away. El sat in the chair, staring at the Black King standing alone in the center of the white territory. He brought his thumb to his lip. "Predictable," El whispered. The detective's eyes went dark. "Watari," El spoke into the hidden microphone in his collar. "Yes, Ruzaki? Create a file. Clearance level 5. Subject, Lelouch Lamperouge. Category?" El picked up the Black King and held it up to the light. Category 0. The bus to nowhere. Lelouch sat in the very last row of the bus bound for Spaceland. He wore large tinted sunglasses and a casual scarf that obscured the lower half of his face. He held a paperback book, The Wealth of Nations, but he wasn't reading. Why he was there? Surveillance. After the chess match, Lelouch had assigned a probability of 85% that Light Yagami was central to the Kira phenomenon. But was he the killer or the target? When Lelouch observed a man in a beige trench coat, Ray Penber, tailing Light from the station, the equation resolved. Light is a suspect. The man in the coat is FBI. Lelouch boarded the bus not to visit an amusement park, but to witness a predator being hunted. He expected a boring ride of counter-surveillance. He did not expect a stage play. Phase 1. The script begins. The bus doors hissed shut. A man walked to the front. Kichiro Osoreda, drug addict, bank robber. He pulled a gun. "Nobody move!" Osoreda screamed. "This bus is hijacked!" The passengers gasped. The driver froze. Lelouch's analysis. Pulse, steady. Threat assessment, low. The gun is a Tokarev. Cheap. Likely prone to jamming. Anomaly detected. The hijacker's timing was too perfect. He boarded exactly when the bus was isolated. His aggression felt rehearsed, like a puppet whose strings were being pulled too tight. Lelouch glanced at Light Yagami, sitting 2 rows ahead. Light was trembling. He was hugging his girlfriend, Yuri. Performance, Lelouch noted. The tremble is rhythmic. He is vibrating his pectorals manually. He isn't scared. Then Lelouch saw the paper. Light was passing a note to the girl, but he was angling it so the FBI agent behind him, Ray Penber, could see the text. "Do not move. I will handle this." Lelouch's eyes narrowed behind his sunglasses. He is baiting the agent. He wants the agent to intervene. Why? To identify him. It was a brilliant trap. Force the spy to act. Force him to reveal his badge to assert authority. Light Yagami was manufacturing a crisis to kill his stalker. "I can't let him have it that easy," Lelouch whispered. Phase 2. The interference. Just as Ray Penber began to reach into his jacket, likely for his badge or gun, Lelouch stood up. The movement was sudden. It broke the tension in the bus like a hammer through glass. "Sit down," Osoreda screamed, swinging the gun toward the back. "I said nobody move." Lelouch didn't sit. He walked into the aisle. He adopted the persona of a spoiled, oblivious aristocrat, the same mask he used at Ashford Academy. "Excuse me," Lelouch said, his voice dripping with bored entitlement. "This is incredibly tedious. I have a reservation at the park. How much do you want?" Light Yagami, internal panic. What is he doing? That's Lamperouge. Why is he here? He's ruining the setup. If he antagonizes the hijacker, Osureta might start shooting before Penber shows his ID. Sit down, you fool. Osureta blinked, confused by the lack of fear. What? I'll kill you, rich boy. With that, Lelouch scoffed, gesturing to the gun. It's a Tokarev Type 54. The firing pin is likely rusted given your attire. I doubt it will even discharge. Lelouch was gambling. He was pushing the chaos to see how Light would react. If Light was Kira, he needed control. Lelouch was stealing the control. Osureta's face turned purple. You think I'm joking? He cocked the hammer. Ray Penber froze. He couldn't intervene now without risking a crossfire. The FBI agent pulled his hand away from his badge. Light's plan was dissolving. Phase 3, the improvisation. Light Yagami's mind raced at Mach 10. Lelouch is going to get himself killed. If he dies, the police investigation intensifies. If the bus turns into a bloodbath, I lose my chance to get the FBI agent's name. I need to salvage this. Light didn't look back. He couldn't risk breaking character. He had to accelerate the script. Light suddenly lunged for the hijacker's legs, not to tackle him, but to accidentally fall. As he fell, he let the piece of paper from the death note, hidden in his pocket, flutter to the floor. No, don't shoot him! Light screamed, his voice cracking with perfect, feigned terror. Osureta, distracted by Lelouch, looked down at Light. He saw the paper. Or rather, he touched the paper. The phantom, the Shinigami, Ryuk, appeared. Lelouch, standing in the aisle, saw the change instantly. Osureta didn't look at Light. He didn't look at Lelouch. He looked behind them, at empty air. Osureta's pupils dilated to the size of saucers. He began to scream. What is that? A monster! Get away from me! Osureta began firing the gun wildly at the back of the bus. Bang, bang, bang! Lelouch didn't flinch. He calculated the trajectory. The shots were high, aiming at the invisible entity floating near the ceiling. He is hallucinating, Lelouch analyzed. No, he is seeing something I cannot see. Light Yagami triggered a visual phenomenon. Phase 4, the escape. The bus swerved. Stop the bus! Osureta shrieked. Let me off! It's haunted! This was Light's opening. The chaos was so absolute that Ray Penber had to take command. The hijacker was clearly psychotic and firing a live weapon. Penber stood up, flashing his badge. FBI! Everyone get down! Light from his position on the floor glanced sideways. He saw the badge. Ray Penber. Victory. Light grabbed the fallen paper and the piece of the note. Driver, open the door, Light yelled. The bus screeched to a halt. Osureta scrambled out, screaming about monsters, and ran into traffic. Crunch. A truck ended the hijacker's terror. Silence returned to the bus. The aftermath. Lelouch sat back down in the rear seat. He adjusted his scarf. He had failed to stop Light from getting the name. He saw the satisfaction in Light's posture as the boy comforted his girlfriend. But Lelouch had gained something far more valuable. He looked at the empty space where Osureta had been shooting. The hijacker saw a monster. Light Yagami dropped a piece of paper to trigger it. Therefore, the power is connected to the paper, and there is an invisible observer present. Lelouch shifted his gaze to the empty aisle. If there is a god of death here, Lelouch whispered, his voice barely audible, I wonder if he likes apples. Light Yagami turned around, acting the concerned student. Lelouch-kun, are you all right? That was incredibly reckless. Lelouch looked at Light. The red aura was pulsing with triumph, but Lelouch smiled. It was a cold, jagged smile. I apologize, Yagami-kun, Lelouch lied. I just hate rude interruptions. I know your secret, Kira, Lelouch thought. You need tools, you need paper. You are limited. And now I am going to break your pen. The red train. The Yamanote line was a steel serpent eating its own tail. It circled Tokyo in an endless loop of apathy and exhaustion. Lelouch Lamperouge leaned against the sliding doors of Car 4. He blended perfectly into the salaryman purgatory. He wore a plain white surgical mask, common for hay fever season, and stared at his phone. But his peripheral vision was locked on a man 10 meters away. Target, Ray Penber. Status, compromised. Penber was sweating. It was a cold, clammy perspiration that soaked the collar of his beige coat. He held a large envelope. He was looking at a transmitter in his hand, his lips moving in terrified, silent compliance. He is being coerced, Lelouch deduced. Hostage situation? No. The fear is too primal. He isn't afraid for a hostage. He is afraid of immediate execution. Lelouch glanced around the car. He sought the puppeteer. The train was packed. Too many angles. Too many reflections. But the air felt heavy. The static pressure of the red aura was here, somewhere, pressing down on the lungs of every passenger. The ritual. The train rattled. Clack, 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 clack. Lelouch watched Penber sit down. The FBI agent opened the envelope. He pulled out a file. He pulled out a piece of paper. He began to write. Lelouch narrowed his eyes. He is writing names. Why? Is he signing a confession? No. He is looking at photos of other agents. He is writing their names down. Logic chain. 1. Kira needs a name and face to kill. 2. The target, Penber, is writing names and looking at faces. 3. Therefore, Penber is acting as a proxy. He is the murder weapon. Lelouch felt a surge of cold fury. It was brilliant. It was disgusting. Kira wasn't just killing the FBI team. He was forcing one of them to slaughter his own comrades before disposing of him. Lelouch pushed off the door. He had to stop the pen. He began to move through the crowd. Excuse me, sumimasen. He needed eye contact. One command. Stop writing and give me the transmitter. He was 5 meters away. 4. Penber's hand was shaking, but the pen moved fast. The man was weeping silently. 3 meters. The train began to decelerate. Next stop, Shinjuku. Shinjuku. Lelouch reached out. He prepared to lower his mask. Suddenly, Penber stopped writing. The agent dropped the pen. He slumped forward, exhaling a breath that sounded like a tire deflating. Did he finish? Lelouch froze. Penber stood up. He looked hollowed out, a husk. He placed the envelope on the rack above the seat, discarding the evidence, and turned toward the door. Lelouch stopped. If he engaged Penber now, in the middle of the exiting crowd, he would expose himself to the puppeteer watching. He had to wait until they were on the platform. The doors hissed open. The sacrifice. Ray Penber stepped out onto the gray concrete of Shinjuku Station. The air was cold. Lelouch followed, 3 steps behind. He reached for Penber's shoulder. Excuse me, Lelouch said, his voice low. Penber didn't hear him. Penber grabbed his chest. The clinical breakdown. The myocardial infarction hit with the force of a hydraulic press. Artery constricted. Blood flow to the left ventricle ceased. The electrical signal of the heart scrambled into fibrillation. Penber gasped. It wasn't a scream. It was a wet, choking sound. He collapsed forward, his knees hitting the pavement. Lelouch recoiled, stepping back into the shadow of a pillar. Too late. Penber fell onto his back. His eyes were wide, staring up at the train he had just exited. He was looking for someone. Lelouch followed his gaze. The ascension of Kira, The train doors were beginning to close. Through the narrowing gap of the steel doors, a figure stood in the shadows of the crowded car. He was wearing a hoodie, but the face was visible for a fraction of a second. Like Yagami, he wasn't hiding anymore. He was looking directly at the dying man, and he was smiling. It wasn't the polite smile of the student council president. It wasn't the fake smile of the tennis player. It was a rictus of pure distilled divinity. The Aura Farm, the atmosphere in the station fractured. To the normal commuters, it was just a man collapsing. To Lelouch v. Britannia, it was a nuclear detonation of the soul. A massive, towering column of blood-red light erupted from Light Yagami. It crashed through the roof of the station, piercing the gray sky of Tokyo. It swirled with the screams of the judged. It smelled of iron and ozone. The aura screamed, "I am the god of this new world." Light Yagami looked down at Ray Penber with eyes that glowed like embers in a dying fire. "Goodbye, Ray Penber," the look said. "You were a useful tool." The doors slammed shut. Bam! The train began to move. The red god was carried away into the darkness of the tunnel, leaving only silence and a corpse. The purple void. Lelouch stood frozen, the sheer magnitude of that ego, the absolute lack of hesitation. Lelouch had killed. He had ordered deaths. He had accepted the weight of sin. But he did it for a purpose, for Nunnally, for a gentler world. He wore the mask of a monster to do good. Light Yagami was different. He wore the mask of a saint to feed the monster. Ray Penber took one last ragged breath. His eyes glazed over. The light vanished. Lelouch looked down at the dead agent. He didn't feel pity. He felt clarity. This wasn't a debate about justice. This wasn't a chess game. Lelouch adjusted his surgical mask. The violet in his eyes darkened to the color of a bruise. The red aura was gone, but the purple shadow around Lelouch began to expand, cold and sharp as a razor wire. "You enjoyed that, didn't you, Kira?" Lelouch whispered to the empty tracks. He turned his back on the body. "A god who demands sacrifice," Lelouch clenched his fist in his pocket, "is just a demon with a better PR department." Ryuzaki was wrong, Lelouch murmured as he merged into the terrified crowd gathering around the body. "You aren't childish. You are rotten, the idol and the interference." Location: Sakura TV Studios, Minato Ward. Time: 1942. Atmospheric conditions: stale air conditioning, cigarette smoke, and the metallic taste of desperation. Lelouch Lamperouge stood in the lobby of Sakura TV. He was not wearing the Ashford uniform. He was dressed in the nondescript gray coveralls of a maintenance technician, a cap pulled low over his violet eyes. He was not here for the news. He was here for the signal. Since the subway incident, Lelouch had deduced that Kira required a platform. Light Yagami was a narcissist. He needed the world to know he was winning. Therefore, the media was the next logical battlefield. Lelouch had spent 3 days infiltrating the network infrastructure, waiting for an anomaly. It arrived in a padded envelope addressed to Hitoshi Demagawa. The receptionist looked at the package. It says, "From Kira." Her heart rate spiked to 140 beats per minute. Panic began to dilate her pupils. She reached for the phone to call the police. The intervention. Lelouch moved, not with speed, but with rhythm. He intersected her vector before her finger touched the dial pad. He lowered the maintenance cap. He looked up. The mask fell away. "Look at me!" The receptionist froze. The red bird took flight in Lelouch's left eye, rewriting her immediate priorities. "Give me that package. Then go to the break room and make yourself a coffee." You saw nothing. She handed the envelope to him with a glassy, placid smile. Yes, coffee sounds nice. Lelouch took the package. He felt the weight of it. A DV tape. He didn't leave. He needed to know the content. If this was Light Yagami speaking, it was intel. If it was a forgery, it was leverage. He walked calmly into a vacant editing bay, locking the soundproof door behind him. He slid the tape into the deck. Click, whir. The monitors flickered to life. The second signal. The screen did not show the familiar L font. It showed a darkened room. A figure was silhouetted, wearing what looked like Gothic lace. "Hello to everyone in Japan," a female voice spoke. It was digitally altered, but the cadence was wrong. It was too high, too eager. "I am Kira. Well, I suppose you could call me the second Kira." Lelouch leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Second?" The video cut to a shot of a diary. The pages flipped. "I know the first Kira's out there. I want to meet you. Look, I can prove I'm like you." The camera focused on a random Shibuya street. The footage was shaky. "That man there, the one in the blue suit, his name is Kenji Sato. He is wanted for assault." The man in the video grabbed his chest and fell. "And that woman, Harumi Tanaka, tax fraud." She fell. Lelouch paused the tape. Analysis. The anomaly. Targeting. She did not need a face and a name. She was looking at them from behind. She only needed a face. Methodology indiscriminate. Killing for proof, not justice. Tone. Desperate. Sycophantic. "Please find me." This was not Light Yagami. Light was a surgeon with a god complex. This person was a groupie with a bazooka. But then the aura bled through the screen. Even on the magnetic tape, Lelouch could feel the psychic resonance. It wasn't the crimson of Light's tyranny. It wasn't the blue of L's logic. It was a chaotic, flickering neon pink. It was the color of obsessive love, the color of a radioactive heart. It was unstable, erratic, and utterly devoted. "I have the eyes," the voice on the tape giggled. "I can see you. If we meet, I can be your eyes, Kira-sama." The strategic shift. Lelouch ejected the tape. He held the plastic cassette in his hand. The world did not know about this. L did not know. Light Yagami did not know. Lelouch let out a low, dark chuckle that vibrated in the small room. "Light Yagami," Lelouch whispered to the silence, "you believe you are the only player with pieces on the board." He slipped the tape into his pocket. By intercepting this, Lelouch had effectively kidnapped the queen before she could reach the king. "This second Kira wants to serve someone," Lelouch mused, a plan forming in the cruel architecture of his mind. "She wants to serve a god." He checked his reflection in the blank monitor. He straightened his posture. He wasn't a student anymore. He wasn't a maintenance worker. "Then I shall give her one." The phantom meeting. Location. Aoyama Shichomi. The location hinted at in the hidden metadata of the tape. Time, 2300. Lelouch stood in the shadows of the park. He wore the Zero costume, not the full regalia, but the mask. He had fabricated it in the drama club workshop at Tuo. He waited. She appeared. Misa Amane. She was dressed in full Gothic Lolita attire, looking around nervously. Beside her floated a white, skeletal giant, a Shinigami named Rem. Lelouch could not see Rem yet. He had not touched her note, but he saw Misa, and he saw the pink aura pulsating around her, begging for direction. Lelouch stepped out of the shadows. He did not speak as a boy. He spoke as the commander. "You called for me," his voice modulated through a voice changer he built into the helmet. "I am here." Misa gasped. She looked at him. Her eyes, the Shinigami eyes, flared red. Misa's perspective. She looked at the masked man. Usually she saw a name and a lifespan floating above a human's head. But above this man, she saw the name, Lelouch Lamperouge. But the lifespan, it was blurry, glitched, because Lelouch was a singularity, a man displaced from his own fate. You, Misa stepped forward, her hands trembling. Are you Kira? Lelouch didn't answer directly. He knew that if he claimed to be Light, she might know he was lying if she ever met the real Light. He had to be something more. I am the one who will change the world, Lelouch declared, spreading his arms. The theatricality was magnetic. Kira is but a symptom. I am the cure. Join me, and I will give you a purpose beyond simple slaughter. Misa looked at Rem. The Shinigami remained silent, wary. Misa looked back at Zero. The pink aura reached out. It found the purple void. It didn't clash. It spiraled. You look cool, Misa whispered. Do you hate the bad guys too? I hate the world that creates them, Lelouch answered. He extended a gloved hand. Come, let us begin the Requiem. Misa Amane, the second Kira, the most dangerous weapon on the board, took his hand. Lelouch smiled behind the mask. Light Yagami had the death note. L had the police. But Lelouch v. Britannia now had the eyes of God. Location, 2O University, main cafeteria. Time, 12:15 p.m. Status, high risk. The cafeteria was a hive of social posturing and caloric intake. The noise level was a consistent 75 decibels, the sound of 3,000 students pretending they weren't terrified of the future. Lelouch sat at a corner table, nursing a black tea. He wore reading glasses, non-prescription, to soften his gaze. Opposite him sat a girl who looked like she had raided a hot topic and then rolled through a glitter factory. Misa Amane. She wore oversized sunglasses, a hat pulled low, and a scarf that swallowed her neck. To the casual observer, she was just an eccentric fashion student. To Lelouch, she was a loaded nuclear warhead. Remember the parameters, Lelouch murmured, his lips barely moving. He turned a page of his textbook, Advanced Macroeconomics. Do not point, do not gasp, do not react. I know, Misa whispered, sipping a strawberry milkshake through a straw. Her pink aura buzzed like a neon sign with a short circuit. Zero-sama is so bossy. Misa just has to look, right? Identify, Lelouch corrected. I need data. He glanced toward the center of the room. There they were, the binary stars of this universe. Light Yagami sat perfectly upright, eating a balanced lunch of grilled fish and rice. He was engaging in polite conversation, radiating the sickening warmth of a politician kissing babies. L, Ryuzaki, crouched on his chair like a gargoyle, pinching a strawberry from a slice of cake. He was staring at Light, unblinking. The tension between them was palpable. The air shimmered with the friction of their colliding intellects, red slamming against blue. Target cluster acquired, Lelouch whispered. Table 4, the two men. Misa lowered her sunglasses by an inch. Her eyes flashed crimson. The world stripped itself of texture. To Misa Amane, the cafeteria was no longer a room of flesh and blood. It was a spreadsheet of mortality. Names and numbers floated above every head like digital halos. Student A, 492021. Student B, 10,492. She shifted her gaze to the center table. Target 1, the hunchback L. Misa focused. The letters materialized in the air above his messy black hair. They were crisp, etched in the red font of the death gods. Name, L. Lawliet. Lifespan, 42,910. Misa blinked. Lawliet, a strange name, but the numbers were there. He was human. He was mortal. Target 2, the pretty boy, Light. Misa shifted her gaze to the handsome student. She smiled. He was cute. Maybe he was the one Zero was worried about. She looked for the name. Name, Light Yagami. She looked for the lifespan. Error, null. There were no numbers, just the name. The space where his fate should have been was empty, a void. Rule invocation. A human with Shinigami eyes cannot see the lifespan of another human who possesses a death note. Misa gasped. The straw fell from her lips. Zero! She hissed, her voice trembling with excitement. The pretty one. He's like us. Lelouch felt a surge of adrenaline hit his bloodstream. He didn't show it. He calmly stirred his tea. Report, he commanded softly. The weird guy crouching, Misa whispered. His name is Lawliet. I can see his time. He's normal. Lawliet, Lelouch repeated in his mind. The name of the enemy. The key to the lock. He had it. The greatest detective in the world was now just a collection of letters. With one sentence, Lelouch could end the investigation. And the other one? Lelouch asked. Light Yagami, Misa said, giggling. But Zero-sama, I can't see his numbers. They aren't there. That means he has a notebook too, right? He's Akira. The world seemed to stop. Lelouch closed his eyes for a second. The puzzle was solved. The ambiguity was gone. Light Yagami is Kira. Ryuzaki is Lawliet. He sat at the apex of the triangle. He held the lives of both kings in his hands. If he killed Lawliet now, the police force would crumble. Chaos would reign. Light Yagami would ascend to godhood unchecked. If he killed Light Yagami now, the Kira phenomenon would end. L would win. The world would return to its boring, rotting status quo. No, Lelouch thought. The violet darkness in his mind expanded, swallowing the room. Neither outcome is acceptable. He needed to break the board. Misa, Lelouch said, his voice cold and precise. Do not stare. Put your glasses back up. Is he our friend? Misa asked, looking at Light with longing. He's cute. He is not a friend, Lelouch answered. He is competition. Suddenly, L turned his head. The detective's black, heavy-lidded eyes swept across the cafeteria. The radar was active. He sensed a disturbance. Maybe it was Misa's chaotic ori. Maybe it was the sudden spike in Lelouch's intent. L's gaze landed on their table. He looked at Misa. He looked at Lelouch. Lelouch didn't look away. He offered a polite, shallow nod, acknowledging a classmate. L paused. He bit his thumb. He nodded back slowly. Blue logic. L. Internal monologue. Lelouch Lamperouge, eating with, is that Misa Amane? The model? Odd pairing. Lelouch is aristocratic, reserved. Misa is loud, commercial. Why are they together? Is he dating her, or is he using her? Wait, why is she trembling? Lelouch stood up. He placed a hand on Misa's shoulder. Let's go, Misa. We have what we came for. They walked out of the cafeteria, leaving the two titans of the Death Note universe locked in their blind struggle. The hallway. As they rounded the corner, away from the prying eyes, Lelouch pinned Misa against the wall. Not violently, but with urgency. Listen to me, he ordered. You are never to approach Light Yagami. You are never to speak his name. Misa pouted. But he's Kira. We should team up. Imagine, you, me, and him. The three gods. Lelouch leaned in. His face was inches from hers. His Gias eye remained covered, but his charisma was running at full voltage. Light Yagami is a false god, Misa. He would kill you the moment you became an inconvenience. He sacrifices his allies. He touched her chin, tilting her head up. I do not sacrifice my pieces. I play to win. Do you want to be a battery for his ego? Or do you want to be the queen of the new world? Misa blushed. The pink aura swirled, dizzy and infatuated. The complexity of Zero's ambition was intoxicating compared to Light's sterile judgment. I want to be useful to Zero-sama. Good! Lelouch pulled out his phone. He began to type a message. He had L's name. He had Light's identity. It was time to light the fuse. I'm going to arrange a meeting, Lelouch said, his smile terrifyingly sharp. I think it's time Lawliet received a tip, an anonymous tip, about a student named Light Yagami. He wasn't going to kill them. He was going to make them tear each other apart. Location, 20 University, East Wing rooftop. Time, 1745. Atmospheric conditions. The sky was a bruised purple, the sun bleeding out over the Tokyo skyline. The wind whipped at the chain-link fence, carrying the distant sound of sirens. Lelouch stood at the edge, looking down at the ants crawling through the intersection below. He checked his watch. Light Yagami was punctual. It was a trait of those who believed they controlled time. The heavy metal door creaked open. Light Yagami stepped onto the roof. He was smiling, that practiced, terrifyingly polite smile. But his eyes were scanning the perimeter. Check for cameras, check for witnesses, check for exits. Lelouch-kun, Light said, his voice warm. You asked to meet? It sounded urgent. Is something wrong with your transfer papers? Lelouch turned. He didn't smile. He let his face remain a porcelain mask of indifference. Drop the mask, Yagami. There is no audience here. Light blinked. The smile didn't waver, but the air around him stiffened. The red aura flickered, sensing a threat. I'm afraid I don't understand. Lelouch reached into his pocket. Light's hand twitched toward his own pocket, where a scrap of the note lay hidden. Lelouch pulled out a photo. He tossed it onto the concrete between them. It was a surveillance photo taken from Misa's perspective, recreated via sketch. It showed Light Yagami in the subway station. I know about the subway, Lelouch said calmly. I know about Ray Penber, and I know why you refused to play chess with Ruzaki seriously. Light stared at the photo. His heart rate didn't jump. He was too disciplined for that, but his mind went supernova. Who is he? FBI. No, they're dead. L. No, L wouldn't reveal himself like this. A witness? If he saw me, why isn't he dead? You're Kira, Lelouch stated. Not a question, a verdict. Light Yagami sighed. He closed his eyes and chuckled. The sound was dry, like dead leaves crunching. You have a vivid imagination, Lelouch. Really, if I were this Kira, wouldn't you be afraid to stand here? Light's internal move. Action. Light casually reached into his pocket, fingering the scrap of paper and a small pencil lead. Plan. Write the name. Lelouch Lamperouge. Speed 2 seconds. Execution. He scribbled the name blindly in his pocket while maintaining eye contact. Lelouch watched Light's hand. He saw the subtle movement of the wrist. He waited 5 seconds. 10. 40 seconds. Nothing happened. Lelouch didn't clutch his chest. He didn't gasp. Lelouch took a step forward, his violet eyes glowing with mockery. It didn't work, did it? Light's eyes snapped open wide. The mask shattered. The red aura exploded in shock. Impossible, I wrote it. Lelouch Lamperouge. Why is he standing? Is the paper defective? No. Is the name wrong? Lelouch Lamperouge is a pseudonym, Lelouch whispered, closing the distance. just as Light Yagami is a mask for the monster beneath. Light took a step back. For the first time, he felt naked. His absolute weapon had jammed. He was locked on a roof with a man who knew his secret and was immune to his judgment. "Who are you?" Light hissed, his voice dropping to a demonic growl. "I am the man who is going to save you from checkmate," Lelouch replied. Lelouch leaned against the railing, crossing his arms. Lawliet is closing in, Light. He suspects you. He is testing you. Today he baited you in the cafeteria. Tomorrow he will arrest you. You are playing a defensive game, and you are losing. Light unclenched his fist. "And you? What are you? A fan?" "I am a fellow revolutionary," Lelouch lied. "I desire the same end as you, a world cleansed of rot. But your methods are crude. You lack intelligence data." Lelouch extended a hand. "I have the eyes of the Shinigami, Light, but I am not bound by their rules." Light froze. "He has the eyes? That means he can see L's name. If I ally with him, I can kill L instantly. I don't need to bargain with Ryuk. I don't need to cut my lifespan." "You know L's real name?" Light asked, the hunger in his voice palpable. "I do," Lelouch said, "and I will give it to you, on one condition." "Which is?" "We destroy the old world together. We dismantle the police, the governments, the borders. You handle the judgment of the sinners. I will handle the conquest of the systems." Light Yagami looked at the hand. He analyzed the variables. "Risk. Lelouch knows my identity. Reward, L's death, total victory. Strategy, accept the alliance, get L's name, kill L. Then, find out Lelouch's real name and kill him too. Red logic, Shakun, Light. I will use you. I will wring every drop of utility out of you, and when the world is mine, you will be the first kneeling at my feet before you die." Lelouch watched Light's eyes. He saw the betrayal forming in real time. He expected it. He welcomed it. Purple logic. Lelouch. He thinks he is recruiting a pawn. He has no idea he is shaking hands with the king. Once L is dead, Light Yagami will be the only threat left, and I will crush him not with magic, but with absolute despair. Light smiled. This time it was sharp, predatory. He took Lelouch's hand. "Deal," Light said. "Show me the path to the new world, Lelouch." "Very well," Lelouch said, gripping Light's hand with surprising strength. "The first step is simple." Lelouch pulled Light closer, whispering into his ear. "We are going to stage your capture. Location, the new task force headquarters, Hotel Tato, penthouse. Time, day 1 of confinement." The air in the penthouse was sterile, filtered, and freezing. Light Yagami sat in the center of the room. He was not handcuffed yet, but the cage was being assembled in the corner by Watari. Light looked the part of the tragic martyr. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes filled with a manufactured confusion. "Ryuzaki," Light said, his voice trembling just enough to be convincing. "I can't trust my own mind anymore. Maybe when I sleep, another personality takes over. Maybe I am Kira." L sat on the sofa, knees to his chest, chewing on the tip of his thumb. His black eyes were unblinking, dissecting every micro-expression on Light's face. "You are volunteering for solitary confinement," L said flatly, "to prove your innocence." "Yes," Light said. "If the killings stop while I am locked up, then I am guilty. Kill me. But if they continue, then you have the wrong man." It was the perfect alibi, because Light knew the killings would continue. He had handed the baton to a partner far more dangerous than Misa Amane. "Very well," El said. "Watari, secure him." As the handcuffs clicked around Light's wrists, Light caught a reflection in the window. He didn't smile. He didn't blink. But deep in the magma of his subconscious, the red aura purred. Your move, Lelouch. Location: a darkened server room, Shinjuku. Time: Day 4 of confinement. Lelouch Lamperouge sat before a bank of monitors. He was not using a death note. He didn't need one. He had Misa Amane sitting on a beanbag chair behind him, scrolling through celebrity gossip magazines, Rem hovering silently in the corner. "Zero-sama," Misa whined. "Why aren't we writing names? Light-kun is in jail. We need to kill people to save him." "We will," Lelouch said, his fingers flying across a keyboard. "But we will not use the notebook today." Lelouch adjusted his headset. He was looking at a live feed of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department's prisoner transfer schedule. Target: Soichiro Honda, convicted serial rapist, currently in transit. Method: Gias. Lelouch had intercepted the transport driver 3 hours ago at a coffee shop. One look, one command. At 1400 exactly, the prisoner Honda will suffer a cardiac arrest. Lelouch checked the clock. 13:59:55. He didn't write a name. He didn't rely on a Shinigami. He relied on the absolute obedience of the human nervous system. 14:00:00. On the news feed in the corner of his screen, a breaking news banner flashed. "Criminal dies in custody." Lelouch smiled. It has begun. But he wasn't just killing criminals. He was targeting systems. "Misa," Lelouch said. "Write this name down. Kozu Nakajima." "Who is he?" Misa asked, grabbing her pen. "The CEO of the construction firm bribing the vice minister. We aren't just pruning weeds, Misa. We are poisoning the soil." Location: Task Force HQ. Time: Day 10 of confinement. L sat in the dark. The blue light of 50 monitors reflected in his dilated pupils. He held a strawberry on a fork, but he hadn't taken a bite in 20 minutes. "Ryuzaki?" Matsuda asked tentatively. "Light has been in the cage for 10 days, and the criminals, they're still dying. It proves he's innocent, right?" L didn't answer. He rewound the footage of the news reports. Death 1, bank robber, heart attack. Death 2, politician, heart attack. Death 3, Yakuza boss, heart attack. "The vector has changed," L whispered. "Huh?" Aizawa frowned. "What do you mean? It's still heart attacks." L stood up. He walked to the main screen. He traced the timeline with a pale finger. "Before," L murmured, his voice speeding up. "Kira was reactive. Someone appeared on the news and they died 20 minutes later. Kira was a child lashing out at what he could see." L pointed to the death of the politician. This man, Nakajima, was not on the news. His corruption was only a rumor on the dark web. He was killed before the scandal broke. L turned to look at the cage where Light was sleeping, or pretending to sleep. "The old Kira judged what he saw." L turned back to the screen. "This new Kira judges what he knows." L dropped the strawberry. He grabbed a new file. He labeled it 0. "This isn't Light," L said, his voice devoid of emotion but heavy with realization. "Light Yagami has a god complex. He wants to be worshipped. This new Kira, he doesn't care about worship." L brought his thumb to his lip. "He cares about results." Lelouch had made a mistake. In trying to be more efficient than Light, he had revealed his own nature. He had shown L that there was a strategist behind the curtain, not just a serial killer. L's eyes narrowed. The blue aura wrapped around him, cold and sharp. "Watari." "Yes, Ryuzaki." Pull the records of every student at 2O University who transferred in the last 6 months. Cross-reference them with high intellect scores and political history. L looked at the screen. He wasn't looking for a killer anymore. He was looking for a general. Light Yagami is the sword, L whispered, but someone else is holding the handle. Location, the White Room Task Force Safe House. Time, 1400. Day 23 of the investigation. The room was a sensory deprivation chamber of white walls, white floors, and the low insectoid hum of hard drives. In the center of the room sat L. Lawliet. Attached to him by a 2-meter steel chain was Light Yagami. Light was ostensibly cleared, but remained under 24-hour surveillance as a consultant. He looked tired, his eyes shadowed, playing the part of the innocent victim perfectly. But the atmosphere shifted when the heavy steel door hissed open. Watari stepped aside. Lelouch Lamperouge entered. He wore his Ashford Academy uniform, a calculated choice to appear younger, harmless. But the air in the room didn't buy the disguise. The pressure dropped. "You asked for me, Ryuzaki?" Lelouch asked, his voice smooth, betraying none of the predatory instinct coiling in his gut. L was crouching on the sofa, but today he looked different. He was wearing large wraparound sunglasses with heavily mirrored orange-tinted lenses. They were garish, ridiculous, and completely opaque. "Yes, Lelouch-kun," L said, his voice distorted slightly by a lollipop in his mouth. "Please, sit." Lelouch sat on the chair opposite them. He glanced at the chain connecting Light and L. "A physical tether," Lelouch analyzed. "If I kill L now, Light is attached to a corpse. He becomes the prime suspect. I cannot use a heart attack. It must be suicide. I need L to unlock the chain and then kill himself." It was a complex command, but Gaius could handle it. He just needed the eyes. "Why the glasses, Ryuzaki?" Lelouch asked, leaning forward slightly. "Conjunctivitis?" L didn't smile. He pointed a pale finger at a stack of papers on the table. "Data sensitivity," L lied. "My eyes are tired, but more importantly, I found a correlation." Lelouch didn't look at the papers. He kept his gaze fixed on the orange lenses, trying to find the pupil behind the mirror. "A correlation?" "The second Kira," L began. "The one who appeared on TV. She mentioned having eyes. She claimed she could see things others couldn't." L paused. He crunched the lollipop. "And then there is the third Kira, the one killing politicians, the one I call Zero." L picked up a piece of paper. It was a printout of Lelouch's immigration entry form. "You arrived in Japan on the exact day of the Shinjuku event. You were present at the Net Cafe during the fire alarm incident, and you are a prodigy in political science who openly criticized Kira's lack of strategy to my face." Lelouch's heart rate remained steady, but his blood ran cold. L wasn't guessing. He was triangulating. "Coincidence is a mathematical probability, Ryuzaki," Lelouch parried, "not evidence." "True," L agreed, "but there is one more variable." L leaned forward. The chain rattled. Light Yagami watched intently, his red aura suppressed, waiting for the blood. "The victims of the Zero Killer," L whispered. "They all die after public appearances or meetings. But unlike the original Kira, who needed a name, this killer seems to require proximity." L's voice dropped to a dangerous subsonic frequency. "I have a hypothesis, Lelouch-kun. I believe the killer requires a direct line of sight, not through a camera, but eye to eye." Lelouch knew the game was up. L had deduced the mechanism of the Gias without ever seeing it. If Lelouch let this conversation continue, L would reach the truth within minutes. He had to act. Now. Lelouch stood up abruptly. "Ryuzaki, this is absurd. Look at me." He poured his will into his voice, a command, a compulsion. He activated the Gias behind his contact lens. The bird took flight. "Take off those glasses!" It was a gamble. If the Gias could penetrate the tint, he won. If not, L sat motionless. The mirrored lenses reflected Lelouch's own desperate face. The blue aura around L solidified into a fortress. "No," L said. Lelouch froze. The physics of the Gias were absolute. It required direct optical contact with the neural pathway. The mirrored coating scattered the light. The signal was blocked. "Why did you order me, Lelouch-kun?" L asked softly. That sounded like a command, not a request. L reached under the table. He pressed a button. The steel shutters on the windows slammed down. The door locked with a heavy magnetic thud. "You tried to force eye contact," L deduced, his computer-like mind processing the data in real time. "My hypothesis is confirmed. The weapon is visual. It is optical transmission." L stood up on the sofa, towering over the seated student. "Light-kun," L said, not looking away from Lelouch. "If I die, if I suffer a heart attack, or commit suicide, or act irrationally, you are to assume Lelouch Lamperouge is the murderer." Light Yagami looked at Lelouch. For a brief second, Light's mask slipped. A smirk of pure, unadulterated malice cut across his face. "He got you, Lelouch. You arrogant fool. You walked right into his line of fire." Lelouch sank back into his chair. His primary weapon was neutralized. His identity was compromised. He was locked in a room with the two smartest men on the planet. But Lelouch v. Britannia did not panic. He processed. Asset check. 1. Gias, useless on L. Still effective on Light, if he could catch him. But Light was chained. 2. Misa, outside, waiting for a signal. 3. The truth. L suspects, but he doesn't know. He has a hypothesis. He needs proof. Lelouch laughed. It started as a low chuckle and rose to a manic crescendo. He threw his head back, his hand covering his face, covering the Gias eye. "Brilliant, Ryuzaki, truly brilliant." Lelouch lowered his hand, his face composed, smiling the smile of a predator who has just found a new path through the jungle. "You really believe in fairy tales? Magic eyes? Mind control?" Lelouch scoffed. "I told you to take them off because you look ridiculous. It undermines your authority." Lelouch crossed his legs. "If I am this zero, then prove it. Arrest me. But warn you, my father is a diplomat. The international incident will be severe." L stared at him through the orange glass. "I don't need to arrest you yet, Lelouch-kun. I just need to keep you here." L held up a key. "I am invoking emergency powers. Until this investigation is concluded, no one leaves this room." The board had shrunk. It was no longer a citywide manhunt. It was a locked room death match. L, the Blue King, has neutralized the Gias, knows Lelouch is the enemy, holding the key. Light, the Red King, chained to L, waiting for Lelouch to make a mistake so he can kill both of them. Lelouch, the Purple King, trapped, powerless against L, but he has one piece left on the outside. And Lelouch looked at the camera in the corner of the room. He tapped his finger on his knee in a rhythmic pattern. Morse code, C-A-L-L. He was signaling Misa. "Let's play, Ryuzaki," Lelouch whispered. "But this time, we aren't playing chess. We are playing Russian roulette." Location, Task Force HQ, Hotel Tato. Time 14:15. Status, total system failure. Lelouch Lamperouge sat in the chair, his mind racing through permutations. He had tapped out CALL in Morse code. Intent: call the hotel reception, make a bomb threat, trigger an evacuation, force L to unlock the door. Outside the hotel, inside a black limousine with tinted windows, Misa Amane received the vibration on her phone. She looked at the screen. Call! Her pink aura flared with the intensity of a collapsing star. Her logic, warped by obsession and a lack of synaptic connectivity, interpreted the command differently. Zero-sama is calling for me, Misa squealed, grabbing her purse, which contained the notebook. He needs me, and if he's with Light-kun, that means Light-kun is in trouble too. Rem, phasing through the roof of the car, looked down. Misa, this is reckless. There are police. I don't care. Misa kicked the door open. I'm the second Kira. I'm invincible. She didn't call the front desk. She didn't create a diversion. She walked through the front door. The receptionist looked up. Miss Amane, you can't be back here. Misa lowered her sunglasses. Her eyes glowed crimson. She saw the name. She wrote the name. The receptionist collapsed. 2 security guards ran over. Hey, what happened? Misa giggled. She scribbled 2 more names. They grabbed their chests and fell. I'm coming, Light-kun, she sang, stepping over the bodies and hitting the elevator button. Inside the penthouse, L froze. A red light on his console began to flash. Security breach. Lobby. Fatalities confirmed. Lelouch's eyes widened. No, she didn't. Someone is coming up, L stated, his voice devoid of fear, but heavy with calculation. They are killing the guards. Heart attacks. It is the second Kira. L looked at Lelouch through his orange glasses. And since you signaled just moments ago, I assume this is your doing, Zero. The elevator dinged down the hall. Heavy footsteps approached. Bam, bam, bam. Someone was kicking the heavy steel door. Open up, a high-pitched, girly voice screamed. I know you're in there. Give me back my boyfriend. Light Yagami's head snapped up. Misa? Lelouch closed his eyes. You idiot, you absolute imbecile. Boom. Rem, invisible to L and Light, passed through the wall and unlocked the mechanism from the inside. The heavy steel door swung open. Misa Amane stood in the doorway. She was wearing a gothic Lolita dress with a short skirt and heavy boots. She held a black notebook in one hand and a pen in the other. She looked like a cosplay of death. She scanned the room. 1. The analysis. She saw Lelouch. 0. He was glaring at her, silently screaming, "Shut up and kill him silently." She saw L. Ryuzaki. He was standing on the sofa, staring at her. Above his head, the red letters floated clearly. L. Lawliet. She saw Light. He was chained, looking pathetic and trapped. 2. The reaction. A strategic operative would have stood in the doorway, written L. Lawliet, and ended the war. Misa Amane was not a strategic operative. She was a girl in love. She ignored L completely. She ignored Lelouch completely. She ran into the room, her heels clacking on the tile. She ran straight to the chained prisoner. Light-kun! She shrieked, tears streaming down her face. Oh my God, they chained you up like a dog. Don't worry, Misa is here. The room went silent. In 3 seconds, Misa had destroyed every layer of deception Lelouch and Light had built over 20 days. To L, she just called the prisoner Light-kun and identified herself as Misa, confirming Misa Amane is the second Kira and she knows Light Yagami. To Light, she just implicated him as an accomplice. Lelouch stood up, furious. Misa, restrain yourself. Misa turned to L. She pointed her pen at him aggressively. The stupid move reached its apex. You're the meanie who did this, Misa shouted, puffing out her cheeks. I can see you. You can't hide from Misa's eyes. Your name is weird. Lawliet. Who names their kid that? Time stopped. Lelouch. She said it out loud. She actually said the name out loud. Light. Lawliet. I have it. I have the name. L. My name is compromised. My identity is compromised. The second Kira is Misa Amane. The first Kira is Light Yagami. 0 is Lelouch Lamperouge. Case closed. L didn't panic. L didn't run. L smiled. It was a sad, tired smile. Lawliet, L repeated. So that is how you do it. You need a face, and the eyes give you the name. L reached into his pocket. He wasn't reaching for a weapon. He was reaching for a remote detonator. I have lost the game, L whispered, but I will not let you leave this room. Chaos erupted. Action 1. Light Yagami. Light didn't hesitate. He had the name. He had the hidden piece of the note in his watch, which he had dismantled and hidden in his belt buckle. He threw himself to the floor, dragging the chain and L down with him. Die, Light screamed, abandoning the act. He bit his thumb, drawing blood, and began to write Lawliet on the hidden scrap of paper using his own blood as ink. Action 2, Lawliet. L saw Light writing. He knew he had seconds to live. He pressed the button on the remote. Clang. Steel shutters slammed down over the door Misa had entered. Vents opened in the ceiling. Gas! L shouted. Knockout gas! If I die, you all sleep forever. Action 3, Lelouch 6, Britannia. Lelouch saw the gas vents opening. He saw Light writing frantically. He saw Misa standing there, confused, holding her pen. Misa, you fool! Lelouch realized he couldn't stop Light from killing L. He couldn't stop L from gassing the room. But he could change the outcome. He needed to break the stalemate. He couldn't geese L, glasses. He couldn't guess Misa. She was too far / already loyal. He turned to the only person exposed. Light Yagami. Light was on the floor, writing the T in Lawliet. He was focused entirely on the paper. He wasn't looking at Lelouch. Lelouch vaulted over the table. It wasn't a strategic move. It was a physical brawl. Lelouch tackled Light Yagami. Don't write it, Lelouch screamed. Get off me! Light roared, his red aura burning hot. He elbowed Lelouch in the face. The two gods rolled on the floor like children, scrapping for a piece of paper. Misa stood there blinking. Should I write his name too? L, pinned under the wrestling boys, looked at Misa. Misa Amane, L said calmly. If you write my name, Light Yagami dies with me. The gas is rigged to my heart rate. 1. Light has written L. Lawley. He needs one letter. 2. Lelouch has Light in a chokehold, trying to knock him unconscious before he finishes. 3. L is waiting for his heart to stop to trigger the lethal gas dose. Bluff or real? Misa doesn't know. 4. Misa is holding her pen, paralyzed by L's threat that killing him will kill her boyfriend. Misa looked at the three men on the floor, a pile of limbs and genius intellects reduced to a brawl. Misa trembled. I don't know what to do. Lelouch, blood trickling from his lip, looked up at her. Misa, destroy the remote in L's hand. Shoot the remote. Misa didn't have a gun, but Rem did. The Shinigami Rem materialized fully, towering over the chaos. She looked at Misa, distressed and crying. She looked at L, the man threatening Misa's happiness. I will not let you harm her, Rem whispered. Rem raised her hand. She wasn't aiming at the remote. She was aiming her notebook at L. The room held its breath. Location, the White Room. Time 1416, the second of silence. The room did not explode. It did not fill with gas. Instead, it filled with sand. Rem, the Shinigami of white bone, made her choice. She looked at Misa, confused, crying, holding a pen like a toy. Rem understood that as long as Lawliet breathed, Misa Amane was a corpse walking. Rem's hand moved like a phantom. She didn't write in a notebook. She etched the letters into the very air, scratching the metaphysical surface of reality. Lawliet. The cost was paid instantly. The law of Shinigami is absolute. To save a human is to die. Live, Misa, Rem whispered. Her voice was the sound of wind through dry leaves. Rem's skeletal body began to fracture. Fingers turned to dust. Ribs dissolved into white ash. The giant, terrifying god of death collapsed, raining down upon the linoleum floor like an hourglass shattering. The pile of white sand buried Misa's feet. She screamed, dropping her notebook. On the floor, Lawliet gasped. It wasn't the gas. It was the silence of his own heart. The massive myocardial infarction hit him. The pain was absolute, a lightning bolt seizing his chest. Convulsed. The movement threw light Yagami off him. Rolled onto his back. The orange sunglasses, the shield that had blocked the Gias, the wall of science against magic, slid from his face. They clattered onto the tiles. Crack. One lens shattered. Lay there, paralyzed. His vision blurred. He looked up. He saw the ceiling. He saw the white lights. And then, blocking the light, he saw Light Yagami. Light was kneeling over him. He wasn't helping. Light was smiling. It was a smile of such grotesque, twisted malice that it transcended human evil. It was the face of a demon watching an angel fall. Blue logic, final entry. I was right. It was you. It was always you. I am leaving the world unfinished. L's eyes began to close. The great detective accepted the void, but Lelouch v. Britannia did not accept the ending. Lelouch stood up, wiping the blood from his lip. He looked at the scene. Rem was dead. Ash. L was dying. Heart attack. Light was gloating. Hubris. Lelouch saw the board clearly. L was gone. The obstacle of the law was removed. But now he was locked in a room with a raving lunatic who thought he was God. Light Yagami had won, and a winner like Light would immediately purge all loose ends. He will kill Misa next, then me. He thinks he is the apex predator. Lelouch stepped forward. The sound of his boots on the tile was heavy, deliberate. He walked past Misa. He walked past the pile of Shinigami ash. He stood directly behind the kneeling, gloating Light Yagami. Light was too focused on watching L die. He was drunk on victory. I win, Ryuzaki, Light hissed, spittle flying from his mouth. I am the god of the new world. Look at me. Look at your executioner. Light, Lelouch spoke. His voice was calm, the voice of an emperor. Light turned his head, his eyes wide with mania. Lelouch, did you see? Fate is on my side. The gods favor me. Lelouch looked down at him with infinite pity. You are not a god, Light, Lelouch said softly. You are just a serial killer with a notebook. Lelouch reached down. He grabbed Light Yagami by the hair. He wrenched Light's head back. He forced Light to look up. Lelouch leaned down. His face was inches from Light's. He opened his left eye. The contact lens had shifted during the fight. The red bird took flight, spreading its wings across the violet iris. Light's eyes met Lelouch's. There were no sunglasses, no barriers, just the raw, naked connection between two cursed souls. Light Yagami, Lelouch commanded, his voice resonating with the power of the abyss. Light tried to look away. He tried to scream, but the neural pathways were already being rewritten. The synapses were firing in a pattern Lelouch dictated. Forget. Light's pupils contracted to pinpricks. Forget, Light choked out. Forget that you are Kira, Lelouch ordered, weaving the spell with surgical precision. Forget the Death Note. Forget the Shinigami. Forget this entire conversation. Lelouch leaned closer, the Gias glowing brighter. You are Light Yagami. You are the top student at Tuo University. You are L's best friend, and you will mourn him. The red aura around Light Yagami screamed in protest. It thrashed, fighting the invasion. The ego of Kira was massive, a fortress of narcissism, but Gias was absolute. The red light fractured. It shattered like glass. The malicious intelligence in Light's eyes faded, replaced by a dull, glassy confusion. Light blinked. His body went limp in Lelouch's grip. He slumped forward, collapsing onto L's chest. Lelouch stood up. He exhaled, his body trembling from the exertion. He looked at L's heart had stopped. The detective was dead. He looked at Misa. She was kneeling in the ash of Rem, sobbing quietly, clutching her notebook. Her mind was too broken to process what Lelouch had just done to her boyfriend. Lelouch walked over to L's body. He reached down and gently closed L's eyes. Checkmate, Ryuzaki, Lelouch whispered. You found the killer, but I captured him. Lelouch turned to Misa. He picked up the death note that Rem had left behind in the dust. He picked up the death note that Light had dropped. He held two books. He held the power to kill anyone. He held the mind of Light Yagami in a cage of amnesia. He held the loyalty of Misa Amane. Lelouch v. Britannia walked to the center of the room. He sat in L's chair. He crossed his legs. He looked at the security camera, which was still recording the carnage. He pulled the mask of Zero from his pocket and placed it on the table. The world doesn't need Kira anymore, Lelouch said to the empty room. It needs a ruler. The screen faded to black. Location, the 23rd Ward, a private cemetery overlooking the bay. Time, 1 year later. Weather, a relentless, drowning rain. The funeral for Lawliet had been a private affair, attended only by the task force members. But this was not that day. This was the anniversary. A black sedan idled by the iron gates. Inside, Light Yagami sat in the passenger seat. He wore a crisp suit, his hair perfectly styled, his eyes clear and bright. He was the deputy chief of the NPA now, the youngest in history, a prodigy, a hero. He looked out the window at the gray tombstone. Rest in peace, Ryuzaki. I miss him, Light said softly. The sorrow in his voice was genuine. It was pure. If he were here, we would have caught Zero by now. In the driver's seat, Lelouch Lamperouge sat with his hands resting lightly on the steering wheel. He wore sunglasses, though there was no sun. We will catch him, Light, Lelouch said. His voice was warm, supportive, the voice of a loyal friend. Ryuzaki's justice will be served. I promise you that. Light turned to Lelouch. He smiled, a sad, grateful smile. Thank you, Lelouch. I don't know what I'd do without you. Sometimes I feel like there's a hole in my head, like I'm missing something important. But then you remind me of the mission. Lelouch turned. The sunglasses hid the Gias eye, which was now permanently active, glowing with a soft, cursed luminescence behind the dark lenses. You aren't missing anything, Light. You are exactly who you need to be. In the back of the car, Misa Amane sat silently. She wasn't wearing gothic Lolita anymore. She wore a modest black dress. Her eyes were dull, glazed over. She held a small notebook in her lap, her fingers tracing the leather cover obsessively. She looked at Light. She loved him. She remembered everything. She remembered that he was Kira, She remembered that he tried to kill Elle. She remembered that Lelouch broke his mind, but she couldn't speak. Lelouch had given her a command on that day too. Obey me and never tell him the truth. She was a doll in a house of lies. Outside the car, floating in the rain, a shadow laughed. Ryuk, the Shinigami, hovered over the vehicle, munching on a red apple. He looked at Light, the neutered god, playing detective. He looked at Lelouch, the demon king, wearing the mask of a saint. Ryuk phased his head through the glass to whisper into Lelouch's ear, though only Lelouch could hear him. Heh heh heh. You know, Lelouch, Light was fun because he tried to become a god, but you... Ryuk took a bite of the apple. Crunch. You're much more interesting. You're trying to become the devil. Lelouch didn't flinch. He put the car in gear. Let's go, Light. The world is waiting for us. As the car drove away, the rain washed over Elle's grave. Deep beneath the soil, the secret died. But in the rearview mirror, for just a fraction of a second, Lelouch's reflection didn't match his face. The reflection wasn't wearing sunglasses, and it was smiling the smile of zero. The narrative thread has reached its terminus. The current timeline stabilizes, and the audio transmission ends here. But the portal never truly closes. It only waits for the next divergence. To ensure you are present when reality fractures again, you must align with the signal. Subscribe to What If Portal Comics. It is the only way to guarantee your passage into the next chapter. The archives are vast, and another world is already waiting for your observation on the screen. The next jump is yours to make. For now, let the static fade. Enjoy the music in this moment of stillness while you decide your next destination. See you in the next reality.